All right, so a short video here, otherwise it takes like 9 hours to download, just on some general things about the content of the class, and then about the audit, and then a few other kind of housekeeping comments. So we've really broken down this course into four main units: understanding brand, measuring brand, crafting brand, and managing brand. And we're just ending our crafting brand unit, and we'll move to the last managing brand next week, which would be the last week of the content for the course. And then the following week, of course, is for the brand audit. So if we go back to, again, the premise of the class is to understand the need to strategically plan, organize, and implement our brand into the marketplace. And so the core strategic or brand strategy really started with an understanding of the mindset of the importance of competition, and that our competition is to compete to be unique, as Porter says, rather than compete for sales. Because again, when we compete for sales, typically it's price, and then price is driven down to the margin of being not worth the return on the investment. So if our mindset of the brand goes in, we go into it with the mindset that we need to compete to be unique, it helps us understand how we want to develop our brand and the functions that the brand serves. Remember, brand function is to identify and differentiate at its basic level, but that's just not through name, phrases, fonts, logos. It's through personality. It's the essence of the why, not the what and the how, but the why, as Sinek has told us in the Golden Circle. So how relevant is the brand to the market? We know it's not relevant for everybody, but to the market, how relevant is it in that value proposition, that exchange, that dollar amount that people are willing to give up for the product or service? And if we focus more on the why or the hedonic rather than the functional or the utilitarian, typically we will be able to sustain that brand relevance. And then we moved on to measuring brand, knowing that there's some traditional and untraditional ways in which we can measure the relevance of the brand. You've been working on a lot of those instruments in your audit project, and there's easy ways to measure the brand in terms of its relevance. You could even just simply by asking people some simple questions, to technical big data analysis and quantitative formulas and algorithms. But nonetheless, we need to measure the brand because it helps craft that brand. Which moves to our third unit, which we're finishing up right now, is crafting and translating that meaning once we figure out what our unique and relevant message ought to be. And when we translate that meaning to the tangible and the intangible, or the hedonic and the utilitarian, we have a better chance of sustaining our unique competitive advantage in the marketplace. Why someone would want to choose our brand over someone else's. Why they would be willing to give up money for not necessarily a need, but perhaps a want, relative to being at steady state. So we have to identify those needs gaps with our product and service, and craft that around what we understand the market's wants and needs are, rather than the Field of Dreams model, which is we build something, cross our fingers, and hope that it comes, it meaning the sales. So we will move on to managing the brand next week. And then finally, as I said, is our audit. Just a couple words about the audit. Our audit is an attempt to show you how brands can go about assessing their value proposition in the marketplace, and then what they might be able to do to improve it, to sustain it, to change it. Often this is done through the work of ad agencies, and they are outsourced, but certainly it can be done internally as well. And it ought to be done internally as well through the internal marketing department or managers through strategy sessions. And so your audit, you are assessing the current situation that you looked at in milestone 2 and then started using some instruments to better understand in a very brief, simple, short way. We weren't doing complex calculations, but to give you a way to test it with small sample sizes, you started using some instruments for each of those milestones. And we will finish the last milestone next week with the complete report card, which you did 2 of, I believe, for one of the cases. Your actual audit report that will be due, I did put out another more detailed rubric and some directions for that. Is going to be a narrative, and you will reference in that narrative that audit, that checkup of the brand, the milestones that I will find in the appendix. So when you're talking and writing about it, you can say Exhibit A, Exhibit B, Exhibit C, as you reference and make arguments for the your assessment of the brand. You don't need to put it in the context. You can just say as seen in Appendix B, and that will be your citation for that. And I can certainly will go to that to look at those actual artifacts that you're collecting. Additionally, you will use your audit narrative to develop or make arguments for your strategy, which again will also occur in that flowing narrative document, where again the majority of your work is actually found in the appendix through the milestones. You will also need to reference those milestones or the work that you did in those milestones in your strategy argument on what you think they ought to be doing moving forward based on your research for this project. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to shoot them my way. I'd be more than happy to sit down or talk. I talked on the phone to another student the other day on the phone because it was hard to physically get together, and that I think was helpful to the student. And also in that conversation was helpful to me because it made me understand sometimes the perspective that you have as a student when you're reading my comments from the cases that I make, to try to give you as much feedback. I do the editing marks rather than just give you a score and you're wondering where that come from. I try to make as many comments as I can, but I also try to be efficient, and in doing so, my guess is sometimes the comments might not appear to get the essence of my point, because I'm trying to be brief, and it could come off as being, like, really? But it is more like comments of questions, like, had you thought about that? Not direct criticisms, but something to think about, or like, use stronger writing here, or this isn't a sentence. It's not meant to be harsh. It's meant to try to just point something out in a quick, efficient way. And if it's come off as that, I certainly don't intend that to happen. So if you want me to get my eyeballs, by the way, in front of anything, especially the audit and sections of the audit, say, hey, is this even close to what you're looking for and stuff, I'd be more than happy to do it. I won't correct it, but I certainly will say, yes, this is exactly what I'm looking for, or whoa, no, tap on the brakes here. This isn't exactly what I meant. This is what I meant, and so you certainly can email me and send the documents, and I'd be more than happy to look at it. So questions, please bring them my way, and have a great weekend.